Physics.
Get down. Lower, yeah.
This way. I don't know, this still.
I think we should, yeah.
No microphone. All right. Sorry about that. My name is Brad Barker. I'm a graduate student in physics. I'm here representing our colloquium speaker, Eric Brewe, on behalf of the Berkeley Compass Project. Compass is a student-run organization formed in 2007 to help with retention of students in the physical sciences by focusing on issues of pedagogy, community, and diversity. Feel free to check out our website after the colloquium at berkeleycompassproject.org. I am thrilled to present Professor Eric Brewe. He's one of the leaders of the Physics Education Research Group at Florida International University in Miami, Florida. I had the privilege of meeting Eric last year while visiting my brother and his in-laws for Thanksgiving in Boca Raton. A price I'm willing to pay to sleep away for a day and a little further south and check out FIU physics classes. FIU physics is doing extremely innovative work, and in case Eric isn't going to brag about that work, I will. His program's calculus-based introductory physics sequence is the only one in the world, to my knowledge, that has resulted in a positive shift in students' attitudes about physics. And the world's had about 5 years now to catch up. That result is that still is. Okay. Eric has been instrumental in the formation of the American Physical Society's topical group on physics education research, or CHEEPR, and is the chair of that group. He's also one of the co-editors of the forthcoming focus collection of physical review special topics, physics education research, gender and physics. He presented this past March meeting on his preliminary findings from pre and post surveys for attendees of the conference for undergraduate women in physical sciences. And his research group is now starting to analyze the formation of communities in the classroom. Today's colloquium is about his work on modeling instruction in physics. So I present to you Eric Brewe.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's an honor to be here. My interactions with the Compass Group go back a number of years. I have been working with Angie Little and Joel Corbo and Dimitri and Bader for a number of years, and even had a project with Bernard Settele here several years ago. And one of the things that thoroughly impressed me about Berkeley, and there's a lot of things that could be impressive about Berkeley, but the thing that impressed me the most was the commitment of the graduate students, the commitment of faculty and graduate students to actually addressing things that they saw as issues within their world, and the commitment of these students to addressing problems that they saw as real and pressing. And so I thought that was, and going above and beyond, I mean, you know, graduate studies and PhD studies in physics at Berkeley. So that's a pretty remarkable situation. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be talking to you guys. I am from Florida International University, and I know what you're thinking. That is a very similar institution to University of California, Berkeley. And it is in some ways. First of all, one of the ways that there's a striking similarity is people look to Berkeley. They look to California, Berkeley as a national leader in physics. And one of the things that I think is both important and oppressive is that you are taking on a pressing problem, and you're getting out in front of it, and you're doing really great stuff in looking into the introductory physics curriculum. You've done the right things by acknowledging this is a problem, and you've done the right things by hiring Ben Spike, who's an incredible resource, and will really work with the department to make sure that an excellent set of recommendations and actions follow. The second similarity is, and FIU has similarly taken on this introductory physics course. And the second similarity is the leadership. Berkeley is the leader and the acknowledged national leader in physics. And I think you graduate more undergraduate physics majors than any other university in the country. FIU is similar in this regard, in that we are a different kind of national leader. We are the 7th largest university in the country. We are the #1 source of bachelor's and master's degrees to Hispanic students in the country. And so, much like people look to Berkeley to think about what is the leadership in physics and how will physics proceed, FIU is similar in that we're looking to be the leader in developing models and testing models of inclusive education for Hispanic students. And so hopefully we will someday be national leaders in some of the similar ways that Berkeley is. So I'm going to talk today about work that is going on within our introductory physics course. I want to argue that the introductory physics course is one of the most important things that a department does. It is the outward-facing introduction to the other sciences. It is the way we engage with students from across the disciplines. It is where we prepare future physics teachers. It is, in my mind, the most important thing that a physics department does. And so I'm going to be talking about our version of the introductory physics course, which is about modeling instruction. I want to start by making some acknowledgements, because none of the work that I do is mine alone. I work with a large research group. We have a number of graduate students, postdocs, faculty, staff, and we have now faculty that are at other universities. So my first graduate students now at Michigan State. Very, very proud to say that. We've got a lot of, I'd also like to acknowledge our funding sources. We have been fortunate and hardworking to develop funding sources from a variety of places, and without their input, this wouldn't happen. I want to talk, this is where we're going to go. First, I want to talk a little bit about FIU, make sure that you understand why I think it is important for lab for America. I'm going to talk about network data. This is my new area of research, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about how I think that means, what I think that means for what the network data tells me about learning and doing physics, and then introductory classes and how they, what my version of modeling physics is, and then talk a little bit about evidence. And the evidence is sort of in the 3 areas. So the first is the stuff we're pretty confident in, the published stuff, and then the stuff that we're almost certain about, and then the stuff that we're kind of heading towards, and we'll see what it says. And then maybe have some time for discussion. And so let me talk a little bit about Florida International University. Florida International University is the 7th largest university in the United States, 54,000 students as of spring 2014. According to our president, Mark Rosenberg, we will head to 65,000 students within 10 years, making us a fairly substantial university, and one that, because of our demographics, and as you can see here, we are about 61% Hispanic, 15% Black, 14% white, and then a variety of other ethnicities. The reason that this is important is that there are very few universities in the United States, and there are almost no research-intensive urban universities that have similar demographics. Mark Rosenberg, the president, likes to say, our demographics are our destiny, all right? And I think what he really means there is that we have the opportunity to develop models for effective practices for educating physics students, educating students across the sciences. We can see this by, he's been invited to testify before the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, and he's now on the Science and Math Teacher Imperative Executive Board and the something else. But we have this opportunity, and one of the things that is happening is that FIU's leadership is taking advantage of this. So I thought I would start with the research that I'm starting into. And I'm going to start with an authorship network. So I've been working on doing network analysis. Network analysis is similar in many ways to graph theory. It's not entirely overlapping, but very similar. So I want to start with an authorship network from Los Alamos National Lab. Giorgio Parisi is a prominent physicist against matter. And what I'm showing you here is an ego diagram. So Parisi is this is an ego diagram, network term. This is an ego diagram. So Parisi's at the center. What this is a diagram that shows the links between the authors that he has published. And what you can see is that he has authors that sort of fall into different groups. So here's a group that publishes on long-range spin glasses. This group published on glasses, spin glasses, complexity, and spectra of disordered systems. Now, I would say that he's an outstanding example of physicist. He's not, I sort of chose him because I could get that network diagram. So what I want to do then is contrast that with zoom out a bit and now look at an entire subfield of physics. So this is an authorship network from the physics education research community. So what this person did, what Ellie Sayre and Kim Anderson did, they took the authorship lists from all the papers published in the Physics Education Research Proceedings and the Physical Review PER journal over the last 10 years. And they created links between authors, right? And then they looked to just diagram this out so that you could see, here is a hub, here is, I believe this is the University of Colorado. So Dr. Spike is in there someplace. That's the physics, that's the Florida International Hub. And so what you can see is this network falls into clusters of lineage. So who worked with whom? That's often a locality issue. But it also falls into questions of interest, and much like Parisi did. Now, I'm not showing you this PER diagram for any reason other than I want to talk about what are the things that I notice when I look at these two networks. And so the first thing I notice is that there are strong connections within and across universities, right? So within the physics education one, you saw not only pretty strong clustering for universities, but you also saw that as people left the universities, they maintained those connections, and I think that strengthens the network. The grouping emerges as interest and locality, and then the thing that I think is most impressive here is that solo authorship does not lead to centrality within the discipline. So people that are, centrality is a feature of these networks, who's prominent within the network. So solo authorship does not lead to that sort of centrality. And one of the common myths that we have in physics is that, we've got this genius who wants to, who works by themselves. It tends not to happen that way. And what that says to me is that if this is the structure of the discipline that we care about, we ought to think about what that means. All right. So I want I want to then sort of preface my next little bits with my argument about what is the basic purpose of an intro physics class. And it is, and actually not just an intro physics class, but any physics class, would be to engage students in this ongoing process of building models, validating models, testing models, using models in new situations, and ultimately revising models. I think that's a fairly decent definition of what science does. And so if that's what science does, then what is it that a class should be doing? Well, a class should be doing that stuff. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about two learning environments. And the first one is, this is a network study in these two learning environments. So at the beginning of the semester, we've got a modeling class over here and a lecture class over here. So you see here, three dyads, a triad, and this little guy here. Along this side, that solid line is actually not a line at all. It is a number of students that don't report that they worked with anybody else. Yeah, I should say. We ask students, who is it that you work with to learn physics? At the beginning of the semester, it's not surprising probably that in fact most students don't work with anyone. The modeling instruction class is a little bit different, but I think actually this is a bit of a false positive here. The tables we have in our classroom hold 6 students, and so this I think is actually structure that shouldn't exist. So there's a little bit more structure in this modeling class, but not, well, actually a lot more structure, but I think some of it's, I don't trust much of it. All right, so then when you ask them this same question at the end of the semester, this is what you see. All right, so first of all, this lecture class has only 45 students. Well, the reason it has only 45 students is that we took this data at the end of the semester. It was 120 student lecture hall. And at the end of the semester, only 40 students saw it valuable enough to show up. So there's only data on 45 students-ish. Again, we've got now 4 dyads, a triad, and this same structure. And a number of students here that don't report that they work with anyone else to learn physics. Contrast that over here, the modeling class. This is every student is represented, so everybody was there at the end of the semester, which is actually a first bit of data. And everybody is connected to at least one other student. Now, think about how that might actually play out in a real world context. If this student right here is having trouble on their homework, what are their options? Well, their only option, the only person that they've got a link to is this person. Imagine this person also has a problem with their homework and wants to ask a question. What do they have? Well, they have a pretty established, developed network of people. They could ask this person or that person or that person, that person. They've got a lot of options. And if none of those people know, then they can go even, oh, you don't know? Well, hey, this guy didn't do it, but they did. Oh, you can go a little further out and say, you can reach almost all of the other students in the class in a very small number of jumps. And so when we think about that, what does that mean? All right. Well, the first thing is that that the student networks in that modeling instruction network diagram much more closely resemble the networks of condensed matter or physics education, where there are extensive collaborations and even subgroupings. The second point is a point that I think is important because departments ought to be thinking about it, is that students eventually teach as they were taught, so that the role of introductory physics is really important, especially as it relates to eventually the people that will teach high school physics. But that's less of an emphasis here. But what I think it says is that the modeling class is an inherently collaborative environment designed to promote engagement. And the lecture class, none of you are talking to each other right now. I'm just standing up here talking. And so why would you be talking about this So the design of the classroom is different and leads to different outcomes necessarily. So I'm going to talk a little bit about modeling instruction. I have said that essentially I believe that modeling is a science, or science is a modeling endeavor. This is that knowledge develops through the models that we build. All right, and these models are both representational, conceptual, and mathematical, sort of all at the same time. And if that's what science is, then we ought to be engaging students in doing this process, engaging them in this process, making them build the models, making them think about how the models are valid and when they're useful. And then eventually we ought to think about how we can design our classrooms, how we can design the discourse within the classrooms to promote that type of discussion and dialogue. So that's the sort of theory underpinning modeling instruction. I have this super sensitive micro HDMI thing. It stinks. This is how it goes up?
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Whew. Back in business. All right. So currently, we operate these modeling instruction classes in 60 or 70 student configurations. We have up until now been using 30 student classrooms. The problem there is that's unsustainable. We've just gotten a new classroom built, and we think we are working towards a financially viable model that we can use for all physics students over the course of the semester. But this is the step towards it. So right now we've got 70 students in this configuration. So it's 5 credits, which is nominally 4 50-minute lectures plus a lab. There's 1 professor, 2 graduate students, and some undergraduate learning assistants. Not 30 discussion groups, 3 discussion groups, editing. It's the full assignment for the physics professor, and the 2 graduate students serve as apprentice instructors. This is a great opportunity for learning assistants. That's a different. The modeling instruction class sort of proceeds in this basic fashion. There's sort of a typical instructional cycle. The first thing that happens is some sort of lab or some sort of activity. It could be a lab, but it could also be a conceptual problem or a problem-solving activity that students do in small groups. And so here are some students working on collecting data. There are some students looking at the data. Once they've gone through and done something in small groups, then they try to summarize what it is that they have done. So we use these small portable whiteboards, and they write on them. And here's some students sort of at the end of this very, very first lab that we've done. And after that, we get together in a board meeting, all right? So the students sit there, and they put their little whiteboards up, and they argue about what's on them. The real benefit of this is that students can, look around and see, oh, hey, they have this on their whiteboard, I don't have that. Or so they have this opportunity to compare and contrast the different, the content of the different whiteboards. And they can look for different ways to maybe solve problems or look for different conclusions that one could draw from data, all right? So this is one of our 3 discussion sections, or discussion circles. So there's my colleague Jeff Potvin, who's sort of leading it, and we've got one here, and then there's another one here, and what you can't see is there's a 3rd one here. So after this board meeting, or during the board meeting, the students are allowed to share and argue about what their ideas are. The instructor tends not to be the focus of attention. And you can see that students are maybe paying attention to what is going on there. So that's a fairly typical cycle. I thought it's often beneficial to let people see this as a video. We've got a clip from a modeling instruction class. This class, just so you know, they've been working on kinematics, moving into energy. The students are working on a lab in a small group. The lab is designed to introduce energy. This is what the sort of basic setup is. They've got a motion detector up here. They've got a playground ball down here. They drop the playground ball. They're to model the motion of the playground ball as it goes through 2 bounces. All right? And at some point in there, we will ask the question, well, why does the ball not bounce as high? All right? As high as it was dropped from. We will let the students sort of ponder this question. So we've got a clip from students that have been working on this question. As they're working on the question, the instructor comes around to the small group and says, oh, why doesn't it bounce as high? And then they say something like, well, because energy is lost. Well, if energy is lost, this is sort of contrary to the idea of energy conservation. And so we say, well, what do we know about conservation? What do we know about energy? It's not created or destroyed. Energy is conserved. So they have these 2 ideas that are sort of in contradiction to each other. And what we provide them is a representational tool, energy pie charts, that allow them to keep track of the storage and transfer of energy within a system. And so they've been introduced to these ideas of energy pie charts, and you'll see them momentarily. And they're sort of wrestling with them. And so here are the people that are here. Right here is Laura. She's a learning assistant. She's an undergraduate that took this class maybe a year or 2 before this video was shot. Then we have 3 students. We've got Marcus, Amy, and Kurt. And I know it says thanks to Vashti Sawtelle for transcribing the video. And I promise that it is transcribed, but I moved from Mac to Windows and it gave up on the transcription. So you're just going to have to listen. Marcus does the majority of the talking. He's got a fairly heavy accent, but I think you'll be able to understand it. So, all right, here we go. Oh. It was working just 5 minutes ago. See if I can do it. Right. Sorry.
Oh, it's not on the screen. It's not on the screen.
What? Damn. This is the way it's supposed to go.
Yep. Maybe makes sense. Makes sense.
It's more potential energy is 12 inches of pride, right? And it's 12 inches of pride that is more different types of energy. So at this point in time, it's 12 inches of pride, potential pride, right? And I'm using so it's changing into so they're saying, I can go pride, right? Potential pride, and slowly changing to blue pride. It reaches the ground, stop. It's blue. It's all blue pride. And it's blue, so it's reducing its blue side. It's blueberry because elasticity of the ball is not complete. Because it hydras. So we lose blueberry in salt and we lose blueberry in heat and we lose blueberry in all different forms of energy. And when it comes up with enough pride, it's still blueberry coming up as it goes up and goes back to blueberry. So brown pride is very common and then brown pride is potential pride. Okay. So what exactly does potential brown pride mean? Potential pride is kinetic pride. Okay. It's the blue pride is and it's increasingly getting faster and goes long. And it's expecting to get more blue as you do. Okay, that makes sense. Right? And then what do you do around it? Like all blue pride. Okay. So then when it comes back up, it's changing that. It's changing back to the wrong side. And that's the what you have the highest one that you have and then when it goes back down to okay, I'm gonna change it to make I'm not joking. And then you have
All right. So there we go. That's blue and brown pie. This is one of my favorite clips. So what did you see? This is the time we have to actually talk. What did you see? You notice anything?
He's explaining it in his own words.
He was explaining it in his own words. I would not have come up with those particular words to explain energy pie charts. Absolutely not.
He was dominating the conversation.
He was dominating the conversation. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
He was enthusiastic.
He was enthusiastic.
He wasn't just explaining it to the learning assistant, he was also explaining it to the other students.
Yeah, he did. He did attend to the other students, absolutely. The other students did ask questions. This is your last chance. Yes.
Were they explicitly asked to describe it in terms of a pie chart, or was there some other model way to?
No, we use energy pie charts because they're really useful in order to show energy conservation, right? And so the professor had come around and introduced energy pie charts, and initially they had looked at them and said, "That's dumb. I don't want to do this." And in fact, you might have heard the teaching assistant or the learning assistant at the beginning saying, "Oh, well, actually, you know, don't do energy pie charts. Just explain it." And he was pretty committed because it feels like that was the moment where he sort of was like, "Wait, I think I understand how to use those pie charts to help explain the physics." So I don't know. So here are some of the last chance. Once. All right. So here are the things that I noticed. So first of all, I know this is a group that's developing ideas. It's not handed to them. They're trying to work it out, and they're trying to make sense of it. And one guy did dominate the discussion, but it did seem like there were points where they were all working somewhat together, and that those ideas were sort of evolving over time. They were negotiating the interpretation of the pie charts. They talked about, well, what's blue pie? What's brown pie? How does that relate to things that, kinetic edge? They spent some amount of time coordinating their representation with the physical phenomena, which is actually a fairly useful thing to be able to do, and one we don't often explicitly ask for our students to do. The last thing is, I noticed the learning assistant. She was awesome. I was so proud of her after this video. She really did a nice job of eliciting questions and redirecting and making sure that the explanations did go to the other students, even though she already understood it. So that's what I saw. And then as they went on, they made a whiteboard. And that whiteboard looked basically like this, is that, oh, look, it went from gravitational down to all blue kinetic, and then it then lost some of its blue pie-ness. And as it went back up, it couldn't go back as high because it had lost some of that blue pie-ness, where now it's no longer lost, it's at least accounted for within the system into the sound and the heat and the vibration of the ball. So, and then they were able to explain this and describe it to other students in that board meeting, where the other students then were able to take up this new representation, use that to guide their understanding of energy. So I'm going to move on to some evidence, like environmental stuff. So when I think about this, I think about how the environment impacted what these students were doing. So first of all, these students were engaged with each other, and that's important because it seems authentic to the practice of science. One of the challenges that FIU faces is retention and persistence. Our students, we talk about 8-year graduation rates oftentimes. And if students can't pass introductory physics, they cannot go on in science. And at a university like FIU that is primarily Hispanic serving, it's really essential that we lower barriers to retention. And so all the theory about engagement is that engagement is the thing that helps promote retention and persistence. The environment's designed to promote argumentation, where those students were allowed to say things in their own ways and agree and disagree with each other. So I think that that the design of the learning environment and the way that you carry out the learning environment has a lot to do with what kinds of outcomes you see. So I'll move on to some evidence. The first bit of evidence is about conceptual understanding. So we did the forced concept inventory, which is a test of conceptual understanding of Newtonian mechanics. We did it at the beginning of the semester and at the end of the semester. We saw that at the beginning of the semester, they were essentially no different. At the end of the semester, the modeling instruction students were much higher than the lecture students. The gain was roughly double that, all right, in just conceptual understanding. Now, this is not surprising, people that have done physics education research, and this is fairly normal, maybe even on the lower end of normal. This is what most physics education research are finding. We've gone a bit further. So we've also looked at success in introductory physics. And so we tried to look at success rates being, did they get a grade that allowed them to continue on to the next semester? In the lecture class, we see it's around 50%. In the modeling class, it's around 90%. Now, where this is important is in terms of gender. As you know, physics is has about 20% of the bachelor's degrees in physics are awarded to women. So what we're seeing is that there's a reasonably similar success rate between men and women in the modeling classes. And importantly for FIU, the students from the majority ethnic representation groups and the statistically underrepresented ethnic groups are all succeeding at roughly the same rate, which is, we think, fairly important. This is what Brad had alluded to. In 2000, I think 10 or 9, we published the very first study that showed students having better attitudes after a physics class about learning physics. So one thing physics classes are uniformly good at is making students think less positively about learning physics, which is really problematic. So that was in 2009. And we have since published this most recent paper, which shows the replications of these. So we've now extended to multiple instructors, and each of the instructors have, many of the instructors have more than one section. So we're finding this to be a bit of a robust thing. So it's less likely that it's just a good class or one good instructor. This is now seeming to be replicable, which suggests that it's due to the curriculum and pedagogical approach. So this is the stuff we're pretty confident with, and it has been published. Our next stuff is a bit less well developed because it's brand new. One of my graduate students and now postdocs, Ida Rodriguez, is taking a look at survival in the physics program. So this is a plot, this is a survival analysis. This is a plot of the probability of earning a physics degree, or at least being enrolled in continuing to enroll in a physics degree program over time. And it's broken out by modeling students and non-modeling students. And so one of the things you see is that the biggest drop is right after modern physics, right here. But that over time, that the modeling students have about an 85% probability of surviving the graduation, and the lecture students have about a 70% probability of surviving the graduation. Now, what this says to me is that the modeling classes, the standard question is, do they cover enough content? Well, clearly these classes are covering adequate content that students can successfully go on and complete a bachelor's degree. And so this is emerging data, and I'm very excited about this, and I'm encouraging Ida to write this up quickly, because we think this is important and it's not been seen a lot. She's also been looking at the pathways, how students are recruited from different majors into different fields, and you can see that they come from a variety of places, and they end up in a variety of places. The lecture courses are much better at turning students into earth sciences. We've got very few earth science students coming from the modeling classes. So it's an interesting bit of research. We're trying to understand how that works out, but I think it shows that we're serving a wide array of people, and these people are earning degrees in a variety of different disciplines. This is a separate thing. This is not modeling specific, but I thought it was awesome. One of the things that she was also able to do, she was able to break it out by gender and find that females had a statistically significantly higher probability of graduating with a physics degree than men did, which was interesting. I don't exactly know how to slice that, but that's awesome data. I had to show it. And now we're getting into the stuff that, this is the stuff that's emerging. The last bits are sort of our future direction. We were funded in June to do an fMRI study of trying to look for neural mechanisms. So we think that if these findings are really robust, that we may have the opportunity to look for brain differences. And we have now 8 brains worth of data. So that's pretty exciting. But this is a meta-analysis that we did to try and identify places we ought to be looking. And so we think we've got some promising work. And that's, this is maybe 4 or 5 years out, but we are very encouraged about this. I think that the modeling instruction classes have had other impacts. Here are the number of declared and intended physics majors at FIU. You can see that starting in about 2000, it grew. That's probably the result of the growth of the university. Since 2003, the growth has been, when you normalize it to the growth of the university, it's about 400% what it was in the late 90s. So we've seen a lot of growth, and that's greater than the rate of growth at the national level, and greater than and even when you normalize it, it's still impressive growth. And so we think that these classes are having something to do with students going on in physics. In last year, I guess it was, the modeling instruction was identified as an effective, as a promising practice for preparing science and math teachers. Teachers are an important subpopulation within our majors. I know you have CalTeach here, and we know that there are not enough physics teachers prepared nationally. Berkeley is well positioned to prepare a number of physics teachers because you have such a large number of physics majors. So this is something I would argue you might think more carefully about. The modeling instruction class has been an important source for students going on in these teacher education programs. 93% of the students that have been in the teacher preparation have gone through the modeling classes, and 22% of the students in the modeling classes indicate interest in becoming learning assistants. So that's 1 in 5 students saying, hey, I'm interested in doing what that woman, Laura, was doing. And importantly, modeling is a cross-cutting concept in the framework for next generation science standards. Because we've had a number of students that have entered the learning assistant program, we've now grown to 168 learning assistants, making us the largest learning assistant program in the country, supporting 98 courses, impacting over 6,000 students. And these learning assistants are from a variety of programs. This is not all due to the modeling instruction program, but it's, I think, at least in part, due to the attention paid to collecting data on your practices, publicizing those data, both through publications and within the university. And I think that one of the things that I would like to argue is that the modeling instruction program has been an important lever in an overall institutional commitment to science and math education, science and math teacher education, and research on science and math. Last month, we hosted John Holdren, the science advisor to the president, and he came and spent time in the modeling instruction physics class. He, of course, is a physicist and was very happy to be talking to students rather than muckety mucks, I think. So that was pretty awesome. And this is my evidence that we are becoming this national leader, and that the modeling instruction program is an essential component to it. This month, we will be searching for multiple tenure track or tenured faculty in discipline-based education research. If you know people that are doing science, engineering, math, education research, these might be appropriate things. So I say this not because I think that anyone here might apply, although maybe someone would. It indicates the university's commitment, the university's commitment that I think is in at least part due to the modeling instruction program. We have developed a set of resources through the National Science Foundation grant. The website is here, the username and password are there. Please visit the site, download. I have been saying for at least a year and a half now, this website will be moving to a more permanent home, but it doesn't seem to be moving. So for now, this is what we've got. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and take some time to answer some questions.
Can this sort of instruction work for topics like modern physics, where it's harder to intuit what's going on?
Yes, and I say that not because I taught modern physics, but because we can do it with electricity and magnetism, which is it's hard to see electrons, right? So so you have to work around that. But I was talking today with Dan, and we were talking about how you might do it with modern physics. Posing what are, here's the data. How do we make sense of these data? Here is what the experiment was. What makes sense to us? And developing curriculum, not saying go discover it yourself. That's improbable. But instead saying, designing curricula so that you say, here's the data. How, what sorts of questions or what sorts of answers would this, how would this make sense with these data? So yeah, I think modern physics would be ideal for this sort of situation.
Do you have any data on how these student networks formed in these classes carry on through the major?
Yes and no. We did a study where we looked at we have a physics learning center, so students work together outside of class, and they do other things like video game nights. But what we were able to see, you can use these network analysis to test hypotheses. And so one hypothesis was that the student networks were formed because students had been through these modeling classes, and in fact, the participation in modeling class turned out not to be a significant predictor, which initially I was kind of bummed about, but then I thought about it a little bit more and I was like, oh wait, what that means is that's not your only pathway. So it's probably for the best, although maybe it'd be cool if modeling did that too. Yeah. Yes. And I'm happy to send this to anyone. Yeah.
What kind of instructional materials do you have? Like, how would they enter before the lab they have before after?
I got the instructional material. What was the second part?
And how are they timed with your laboratory? They read materials related to the subject and answer the lab.
No. We offer them a physics textbook if they feel like they want it. They will use we give them the same book that they would use for modern physics, because if they're going to go on, maybe they'll use it there. We tend not to use it. There are a couple of reasons. One is that the models are very seldom obvious in modern physics or in the physics textbook. Best example is Ohm's law. Ohm's law is written as if it's a law. Well, it actually only works in certain circumstances that are, only resistors. So, but that's not in that textbook. And it's very easy to collect data to show that. And so, often we find that the textbooks are written in a way such that it implies that the knowledge is only one way. And we know as physicists that it's rarely only one way. So to get around this, we let them use a book if they want to use a book, but we don't encourage or we don't discourage reading, but we don't assign reading. What we will do is, and this I've done one or two times and it was a lot of management, but I think it could be cool, is we have students build their own wiki textbook where they can use their examples that they've drawn from their class. So, they post pictures of their web or of their whiteboards, they write notes, and then they respond to each other. But it was a lot of management. I'm not great at that level of management.
What your graduate studies physics,
I think that it's not obvious. We don't have those data. We have 2 or 3 physics teachers per year. We have a number of students that go on in physics graduate school, but we have a number that go and do other things. I think it's probably not altogether different than the national numbers, which are, I think that, 8 out of 9 go on and do something other than physics graduate school. I don't know the answer to that question.
Are your assessments, such as homework and tests, purely qualitative?
No.
So when do you introduce the quantitative equations to the students?
Well, one of the things, so we would use those, for example, those pie charts. Those are a really great way of organizing how you write your energy conservation equations, right? Because you can say, oh, what's in this pie? What's in that pie? Oh, we know those pies are equal, so we can equate them. So that's actually a really sort of elegant, but we do it when we start with a qualitative pass first, almost always, right? Very rarely do we use quantitative to motivate the next sort of model. That's just the way we have chosen to do it. But they always, these students have to be physics students. They have to be capable of solving physics problems. We find that they are much more able when they have a reasonable conceptual understanding first.
So is that just introduced, for instance, at the later portion of the class, once they've built up a model?
They when it's appropriate, right? When they can, you can make certain predictions with those pie charts, but they can't tell you everything you might want to know. So when you need to go further than those pie charts can tell you, that's when we introduce it.
More specifically, how does your modeling education facilitate learning special relativity and further applications?
It doesn't. Well, we don't teach special relativity in our intros sequence. We have a 2-semester sequence. It doesn't address, in modern physics, I'm sure that's taught there. But we haven't gotten to modern physics yet. I think though that one of the things that's sort of jarring with relativity, at least it was to me, was, wait a second, have they been lying to me this whole time? Like, this is the way it is, and then all of a sudden you change it on me that, well, it's this way as long as you're not going too fast. So this idea of a model, I think, is really useful. And so our students, for example, wave-particle duality. Well, is it a wave or is it a particle? Well, it depends on how you model it. And how you model it depends on what it is you want to do with that. So I think that there is a case where the idea that that knowledge is contained within the models is really a powerful thing, and that we ought to think about them as things that students can sort of manipulate, and that we manipulate. So how does it work? We don't teach special relativity, but I think this notion of models and modeling as a process are particularly important for the development of them as physicists and as scientists.
What is the attitude of your students towards physics and science in general, given your instruction technique of modeling? Does it differ? Do they appreciate it in of itself? Or?
They are happier about learning physics after the class, and none of my colleagues can say that. What role does that play? I'm not entirely certain, but we know that being good at something and feeling like you're good at something is an important predictor in continuing to do that thing. So if somebody feels good about the way they understand physics, the way they learn physics, they are more likely to continue on. The University of Colorado showed that having positive attitudes towards physics is a great predictor of whether they will go on and be majors. Now, they showed it through a filtering effect that students with positive attitudes tended to go on and be majors. They didn't show positive shifts. So it's hard to say whether whether the positive shifts matter in terms of turning people into majors. But certainly for filtering, it does matter. So yeah, I mean, our students seem pretty happy about doing physics. The Society of Physics Students is a very active group that won National Society of Physics Students Club of the Year several years ago. So they like it and they care.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
Can you isolate what is due to modeling and what is due to the interactions?
No.
For instance, could you compare with Kale at MIT, which has similar setup of the classroom? Can you come back to that?
Similar in some regards. Other regards, not so similar. Our students are not exactly the same as the Teal students. Although, no, I haven't thought of ways to isolate one from the other. And I don't think you should be able to, exactly. Because modeling and science itself is an interactional endeavor, that it's hard to say when you're doing one if they're co-requisite. I don't think it would work.
All right, well, let's thank you.
Thank you all.